President's Leaders Forum. My name is Cody Chang, class of 2013. I'm majoring in economics, and I'm here with my classmate.
My name is Nikki Holzberg. I am a senior at CMC, majoring in philosophy, politics, and economics.
And we're joined today by the 2011 Kravis Prize recipient, Miss Vicky Colbert. As you know, Ms. Colbert, the Kravis Prize is funded by Mr. Henry Kravis, and part of his generosity to CMC with this prize includes, a ceremony in New York City. So, how was your experience in New York?
It was wonderful. It was really great to have the feeling that the whole MoMA was for our reception. So it was just extraordinary, and to see such important people that were participating, and it was really very challenging, and it just gives you a great feeling of assurance and motivation to continue moving forward.
Wow. So on the topic of moving forward, how do you think the Kravis Prize will influence Escuela Nueva in the future?
Well, first of all, it's a very prestigious award, and this opens doors for us. We get a little bit more respect from everybody, and of course, it's not only the let's say the financial part, because of course our institutions always need a boost financially to help us move forward in other contexts, like it can help us, and to develop new products also, and move more forward in Colombia. But I think the most important thing is the relationship with the Kravis Leadership Institute here, because one of the essentials of the Escuela Nueva conception and model is promoting leadership skills in children and youth, and in girls especially. So, just thinking of creative ways of linking with the Leadership Institute here, for me, I think is one of the most important things. So you feel that you're more protected in the way you approach and you move forward.
Ms. Colbert, or Vicky, we're wondering, was there a specific moment or experience that really cemented your commitment to education? Or was this a passion that's just grown slowly and continually over your lifetime?
I had three moments. Well, first of all, I'm originally a sociologist in the sociology of education, so I'm totally convinced conceptually that without quality basic education, there will be no development in any country, and unless there will be peace and development. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing, I myself was exposed to quality education during my basic years, and this helped me also to see the contrasts when you go to visit public schools in developing countries. So that's another issue. Another third issue, and I'll mention a fourth one also, is that I had the chance to see wonderful creative teachers. In Colombia, I met a wonderful creative teacher who co-authored with me the whole model, because he was doing wonderful things in his school. Yeah, but the issue was not how to do it in one school. The issue is how to do it in 30,000. Okay, that's the third thing. And the other thing, I initially started giving classes at the university, more academic level, and I found that in developing countries, it's much more difficult and a much more challenge to try to transform the schools in primary education, secondary education, than to give classes in a university. So that I also questioned myself the way I was giving classes at the university. The only advantage I had was that I had the reading materials before the students. So if I gave them the reading materials before, and if they analyzed them before, my role would be different. So this itself already challenged my way of thinking about education. And I thought it was much more challenging to give classes to isolated rural teachers and to work with them to help them transform their classrooms and schools than to just be a university teacher.
A bit of a follow-up question to that. It sounds like your educational background impacted your understanding of education and what needed to change. Was your family life a big support system as you embarked on this adventure?
Oh, definitely. If you can't beat them, join them. This is what my situation. Well, first of all, my mother was a great educator in Colombia. She was a great education leader in Colombia herself and an artist. So, and I had the great benefit of having her as a mother. So, she was always helping me analyze and conceptualize and understand the whole process of learning. But the second thing is I'm so fortunate that my family, both my husband and my daughter, they've joined efforts to support me all the time intellectually, in solidarity, and supporting me. My husband is also a sociologist, and he's been in the background helping me so much to move strategically and conceptually in all these fields. And of course, now my daughter, she went to the business school in Colombia, and she just returned from NYU, and she's working with me. She was working with me, and she will continue working me, because they see that it's a worthwhile investment, and it's a life project. So I think if you can't beat them, join them. They ended up working with me because it's the easier way to balance out all our talents and our energies. So it gives you a wonderful feeling of fulfillment.
So one of the wonderful things about Escuela Nueva is the focus on responsible freedom and democratic processes. But what does this really mean for the younger students in the Escuela Nueva model? Can you explain a little bit about that?
All children in the classroom participate in some committee or another. So they have a feeling of responsibility and participation. There are very simple instruments of self-control, attendance sheets, of all the things, of suggestion boxes, all the things that we know to promote participation from the younger children. So they take leadership, they know about creating leadership skills. And another thing that's very important is the cooperative learning approach, which is not new, as I say, in the philosophy of education. Nothing of this is new. We know the theory for many years. The challenge is how to put it in practice in a very simple, cost-effective way, so any teacher can do it. Mm-hmm. And this cooperative learning, just children sitting among themselves, looking into their eyes, not in their necks, behind each other, just looking at themselves, dialoguing, trying to solve problems together, agreeing on what goes first, what goes second, accepting the other person's ideas and not using force. I mean, this is where you start developing the skills of citizenship and learning how to participate. You can't talk about participation if you don't learn how to participate.
So a follow-up on that, do you find any private organizations or businesses that you work with that kind of validate these skill sets in workers? So are there any businesses that find specific parts of the Escuela Nueva model very relevant?
Extremely, because we precisely, these are the skills that private sectors are looking for. People that know how to lead processes, learning to learn, learning to make decisions in teams, meeting deadlines, and especially working in teams. I personally think that the Coffee Growers Federation of Colombia, who are, have been so supportive of Escuela Nueva, they're a very progressive organization. I think Escuela Nueva helped them to develop their business better, because I think they have much more entrepreneurship skills. I think more than 21st century skills, entrepreneurship skills. And now we're introducing them in a much more explicit way in our secondary education programs.
Interesting. I'm going to actually jump ahead and ask a bit of a follow-up to that as well. It's very relevant. It's clear that the Escuela Nueva model really promotes students to find what they love. You see that through the ability for one student to change committees to another committee that they find they're more interested in, or they go to the learning corner and pick out what they find best. Or the model also encourages students to really become a leader or a follower, an active participant. You see that through students running for president or students running for committees. Wondering, how do you think this is going to affect future generations and kind of civic engagement and productivity in careers in the future generations of Colombians and Latin Americans?
This would be great to really follow up on courts and this, because I do feel that we are creating a nest of leaders and of very responsible children that are assuming their commitments, not only learning about elections and democracy and the formalities, but learning to take over. And the morale of children in basic education is so powerful and so strong. They're really aware of these issues. So I really think we are promoting a cultural shift in Latin America, at least in Colombia and the countries we're working in, where they're taking much more ownership and responsibility of the actions they're doing. And something that's very important is that it promotes also the concept of empathy. Empathy is putting yourself in the other's shoes, trying to understand the other person. And this, you can only do it if you're dialoguing among yourself, if you're having some cooperation, some cooperative learning approach. I think this is what we're needing in society right now, that people learn to work and dialogue much more and reach conclusions together, and agree and not use force if they don't agree. So this, especially coming out of Colombia, is exceptionally important.
So on the topic of leaders and leadership, you yourself was a great leader. You were the Vice Minister of Education and the former educational advisor for Latin America. And I believe that you developed this Escuela Nueva model and implemented it in Colombia. And then you transitioned it into a private organization, or NGO, I should say. Could you talk about a little bit of the process, some of the problems that you encountered?
Yeah, a bit different from other social entrepreneurs. We started working, trying to introduce the innovation within the government spaces, which is the toughest part, because you have to break with resistance to change, with bureaucracies, opposing. So we really had to outbeat the system and trying to demonstrate that it worked, bottom up. So I mean, I think we were forced to do it bottom up. And once we had something to show, and we had some research evidence behind, then this gradually started, sparkling up, and you would have a demand-driven approach from other teachers, because you have to make sure that the agents of change themselves, which are the children, the teachers, and the parents, they're the ones that take ownership. So it's a whole concept of social participation. So once this started up, this was very, very important, and it became gradually a national policy in Colombia, reaching like 20,000 schools. But just as when I ended up, I became vice minister, not because of political issues, it's because I had results. We had something to show. But then when I left the ministry, I said, this is not going to be sustained. So the issue here was we had to create an NGO from civil society, Escuela Nueva Foundation, which is an NGO in Colombia, mainly to ensure the sustainability. And we also had to knock the doors of the private sector, to bring in the private sector to ensure also quality and sustainability. So we learned that you need the three actors: government, civil society, and private sector, the public-private partnerships. You need them all. You need the governments for high impact, and then once I scaled up, I had to scale down to ensure the sustainability and the quality. I had to create an institution to sustain what we had done and what we achieved at a greater scale.
So you've had deep experiences in UNICEF and also as the Vice Minister of Education in Colombia. Can you speak a bit about how holding these positions has impacted your ability to create such a successful nonprofit?
Well, it helped me to understand how governments work. That's important, to see the importance of working with governments. It also helped me to understand multilateral organizations like the World Bank, like UNICEF, like USAID. This is also extremely important. And the achievement of Millennium Goals will never be achieved unless you work with all the three. But I also learned how to outbeat the system. You have to also see how to run around it, how to beat around the bush, how to move things, because sometimes the organizations, bureaucracies don't learn. They're not learning organizations, so they lose their institutional memory. So here you see the importance of making these bridges and complementing the state and helping the state. So this is why our mission is to contribute, not necessarily to take over the responsibility of the government, but to contribute. So this is something that we've learned, and this has been extremely important. Of course, another additional lesson learned is you have to also develop a lot of tolerance and tolerance to frustration, because this is one of the big problems when you work with international and national bureaucracies.
If I may ask a follow-up question to that, what advice would you impart to young social entrepreneurs who are just emerging in this field? And is it better to go out and get experience in other organizations, or better to just jump right in and start creating, making your vision into a reality?
I think something important is that you really know very well before you start what you really want, and that you also see what already exists in existing or international organizations, what are they promoting, and also to learn that you have to have bottom-up processes, and that one important thing, I think it's so important that you have research and solid evidence behind of what you're doing. Because if you want to impact national policies, if you want your innovation to impact national policies, You have to have sure that you have evidence behind. But on the other hand, international organizations always also forget, and they reinvent the wheel all the time. And new governments want to reinvent everything again. So here again, you have to have good research behind. Before you dwell on new things, it's good to have some evidence behind what you're doing. This is extremely important.
So Vicky, thank you so much for your time. Just to pick up on what we have in the United States, if the mayor of Los Angeles invited you for dinner and asked you for your advice on how to improve the public school education system here, what would you tell him?
Well, first of all, I assume that there are many wonderful things going on in this country, and there are many innovations. And what I'm talking about is not new in the philosophy of education. We know the theory. But and of course, the first thing I would like to know is what already existing things do you have? I mean, it would be lack of responsibility of me to say what you should be doing if I don't know what you're already doing and what you already have in place. So that would be the first thing. But on the other hand, building from our experiences in developing countries, is that it can be done, and that you can improve quality education, and that's not so complicated. That or you try to change the whole system, and that's the way of how to do it. So I think I would go through the easiest way, which is that any teacher can make change in their classroom. So I think I would focus more on transforming the pedagogical processes in the classroom. That we could work with some pilot schools to demonstrate that it can be done, and that you can have improvement, but focus more on the way you deliver your pedagogics. And I think this is the emphasis I would make, that any teacher can do it in their classroom if you start changing and making these learning environments much more supportive of the way children learn. So there are many issues in reorganizing the education sector, but I would focus on the easiest one, which is that the teachers can do it themselves in their classroom. So I would focus on this issue.
We imagine that you've probably been traveling all over the world. Your model has been implemented in Asia, Latin America, and Africa, and you've traveled extensively and studied within the United States. Where would you say is your favorite place to travel to, and where do you travel most frequently?
My favorite place to travel is to get back home. That's when I want to get back home. I think that's one of the best places when you can relax and sort of bring all your thoughts together at the end. But of course, there's just so many wonderful countries and so many wonderful experiences and people eager to move forward. I think the most important thing is that everybody values education and quality education as the most important investment that what a country can do. Investing in your social capital and your human capital. So I think that is the most important thing.
Wonderful. Well, we want to thank you so much for joining us today at Claremont McKenna College and for taking the time to speak with us today. So thank you very much.
It's an honor for me to be here, and there's so much to learn from all of you. You have a wonderful organization. Thank you so much.
Thank you.